I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here on this football Sunday during the playoffs. And I am Melissa Hernandez from the Dublin City Council. I was going to use my notes today for my opening statement, but I decided that I was just going to say it from the bottom of my heart. And that is, why am I running for Alameda County Supervisor? It's because I care. Because I was a child that was once there at one given time. I was the child that had holes in my shoes, that had to walk to school. The kid that was worried about making sure that my mom's food stamps lasted her through the entire month to feed all 7 kids. I was the child that was always worried about, were we going to have enough money to play for the sports that we wanted to play for all my 7 brothers and sisters that were growing up. But I also feel that I've been fortunate enough at this point in my life to give back to our community, to sit there and say that I've sat on many committees and that I am the perfect person for Board of Supervisors District 1. I sit on Valley Link, and I've always been one of the top first leaders to make sure that we're going to get Valley Link through for our transportation for the East Bay in Alameda County. But also sit on East Bay Community Energy to make sure that we are being efficient at trying to make Alameda County more green every single day. By sitting on these committees, I've learned a lot, and I do deserve a position on the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Mr. Howard. Thank you everyone for being here today. I am David Howard, and for the last 20 years I have proudly served my community as a school board volunteer, then as a school board trustee for 10 years in the city of Dublin, and for the last 8 years as council member and mayor for nearly 6 years. I fought hard to represent the best interests of my community, and I'm proud of my track record of success. Dublin Unified is a well-recognized school district top performer, and Dublin, City of Dublin, is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. We have a diverse economy, great parks, and one of the finest police and fire teams to keep us safe. And I'm now honored for the opportunity to serve as Alameda County Supervisor, representing the great cities of Fremont, Livermore, Dublin, and Sunol. Alameda County faces many challenges. Increasing homelessness, traffic, gridlock, and rising crime rates all threaten our quality of life. And the supervisor position is very critical. They have a large budget that is directed to public services, transportation projects, and things that really do affect the quality of life. And today I'm going to share why I'm the best candidate, because I know what it takes to get things done. I'm the only candidate with mayoral and school board experience, the only candidate broadly supported by members of the Democratic and Republican Party, and the only candidate here to serve on some of the very most important regional transportation commissions. But don't just take my word for it. I'm also proud that all of the mayors in the Tri-Valley have endorsed me, every single one of them. I'm endorsed also by council members and school board members across the district, and I thank you for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Wachowski. Well, thank you, Ron. I would be honored to represent the people of Dublin and Livermore and Fremont at the county supervisor level. I think I'm uniquely prepared to represent people in Alameda County moving from the state senate. This is my 10th year in the state senate, and while the Senate doesn't deliver, the state provides funding for social services, it's really the county that delivers the social services, whether it's food stamps, the SNAP program, or other social services to help those that are in need. I have a suite of bills that I've passed that deals with financial hardships that folks have. Very proud of the work I did with bank levies, with garnishments, where people are financially strapped, and how do you help them out? How do you protect them so they don't slip into homelessness or experience? But the county does other things. They run the probation department, we have the juvenile department, we have transportation. Scott Haggerty's been a champion of being the underdog here in whether it's Fremont or Livermore, and making sure that we get our fair share of funding. I've been doing that at the state level. I expect to do it and continue to do that as a county supervisor.
Mr. Bacon.
Thank you all. I got my start in Fremont city politics, opposing the Patterson Ranch development. This was a sprawling development on the edge of town, not near transit or retail, and with no affordable housing. It was opposed by the Sierra Club. The superintendent of schools spoke about the project, and he said, "You can do this, but I've got no room in the local schools for these people." I have master's degrees in transportation engineering and city planning, so I have somewhat of an educated opinion on what is good planning. And this project was simply not a well-planned project, but it was approved unanimously. I found out that 4 of our 5 city council members at the time took tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from the property owners. This includes one of my opponents here who took 25 maximum value donations from the property owners. Seeing this blatant pay-to-play, it upset me to the point where I said I want to run for council myself, pledging not to take any developer money. I was the first candidate I knew of to refuse developer money, and I'm proud to say that we now have a majority of members of the Fremont City Council who have never taken developer money. I believe that if you really want to see a change in the way our local cities are developed, then you need to elect clean money politicians at all levels of government, including the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors does figure into regional issues like Senate Bill 50, and there is a strong desire to develop in the unincorporated lands of eastern Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statement. This first question will be going and starting off with Mr. Halbert. Some background. Residents of District 1 often endure lengthy commutes to surrounding job-rich districts in Silicon Valley, Oakland, and San Francisco. Many of the proposed solutions to our widely recognized transportation issues are extremely expensive. Voters have approved numerous tax increases to fund transportation, including Regional Measure 3, approved in 2018, Measure BB, approved in 2014, with increased Alameda County sales tax rates by 1%. All revenue for Measure BB of almost $8 billion are dedicated to transportation initiatives, of which $400 million was earmarked for a BART extension to Livermore. This extension was rejected last year by the BART Board of Directors. Do you think that the $400 million in Measure BB funds should be redirected to Valley Link Rail to facilitate commuting from the Central Valley, or should that money be spent on initiatives to serve Alameda County residents? Mr. Halbert.
I'm not sure if that's a yes or no question. The short answer is absolutely yes. The money was approved to extend the BART line. The BART board decided not to use the money that way. The money should be earmarked for Valley Link. I fully support Valley Link. I would say that from the very beginning of Valley Link, I supported the project and was on the committee that helped form the Valley Link JPA. I want to thank the Supervisor Haggerty and working along the lines with our state assemblywoman at the time, Catherine Baker, and Susan Eggman for sponsoring special legislation to make that happen. But we absolutely need Valley Link. We absolutely need a light rail extension into San Joaquin. And I would say you mentioned several of the other transportation projects. We in Dublin have used the transportation funds given to us very wisely. We widened Dublin Boulevard. We helped to extend widen Doherty Boulevard and widen Dublin Boulevard, and we're going to help extend Dublin Boulevard through to North Canyons Parkway in Livermore. We do a great job spending the transportation dollars that we have. The county supervisor position is critical to that, and I will fight hard to get our resources to make transportation one of my top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wojtkowski.
Yes, I now support Valley Link. In full disclosure, I was the only member of the Senate that voted against the Baker legislation and the only person in the Senate that voted on the floor. But that's just the beginning. What happens is that you continue, even though you vote on something, you continue to obtain information and shapes your views in public policy. I got to thank Supervisor Haggerty, who was tenacious, is saying, Wojtkowski, take another look at Valley Link. And my concern had always been that we're bleeding money from the ACE train and that transportation system onto the Valley Link, and you wouldn't. We have 27 transit districts. Why do we need a 28? But I take another look at it, and to the credit of the Valley Link people in San Joaquin and over here, and the ACE people, they started working together on the sharing of the track through the tunnel, co-locating locations so people get on one and off the other, and really relieve some of the traffic that's on 580. So I'm now enthusiastically supporting of it. So where to go? I'm the Senate Transportation Chair. So I have made a commitment to the supervisor that I'm going to work now, this year, to close the $100 million gap, because if we don't get $100 million, nothing gets built, even if we do faster transit. Mr. Bell.
Actually, when I went to graduate school at UC Berkeley for transportation engineering, my goal was to really study transit and to be much more of a transit advocate. And I definitely feel we need more transit, especially given that the transit patterns between what's here in District 1 and Silicon Valley, we're really lacking transit. However, one of the things I learned in school is there's a famous paper called The Desire Named Streetcar, which talks about how a lot of very expensive transportation projects did not give the bang for their buck. To answer specifically about Valley Link, yes, I like the idea. However, it is a $2 billion project. I would need to see ridership figures. I would need to see all the details to make sure that we approve something like that. The one other thing I want to say is that we have a lot of very expensive transportation improvements. Look at the 680 widening. I don't know the cost of that, but it's enormous. We could do a much better job by simply moving more jobs here to the Tri-Valley and in Fremont, and actually pushing more cities on the peninsula to do their fair share of housing, because that's what's actually going on. Why do we have such a transportation problem? Because we have a massive jobs housing imbalance. I'm a software developer. I've worked in many places. Silicon Valley, San Jose, I now work in South San Francisco. I'd love to work in Fremont, but the thing is, there's just not the jobs here. And the far cheaper way of, I think, of improving things would be to actually do some economic incentives to incite employers to work out here, to locate out here in Silicon Valley. I mean, in the Tri-Valley. Thank you.
All right, the mic to Ms. Hernandez, please.
Yeah, so the question being that the $400 million going back from BB funds being redirected back to Valley Link, absolutely. And the reason being is because when our voters and those taxpayers were paying into that, it was for rail. And so making sure that we complete that rail project is very important. And it's really important because it's a quality of life for individuals. When people are sitting on the freeway for about 2 to 2.5 hours just to get from one destination to another, that's not a good quality of life. So to make sure that Valley Link is accomplished at the end, hopefully by 2027 we can start completing that project, is to make sure that we, again, have a good quality of life for individuals, to make sure that there is economic development on those 7 stops from Dublin Pleasanton all the way to the San Joaquin Valley area, to make sure that that time is utilized correctly. So to make sure that that $400 million does go to rail money, because that's what the voters wanted initially.
The background on this is, in addition to previously approved tax increases, voters may be asked to approve an additional 1% increase in November 2020 with the Faster Bay Area Initiative. What are your thoughts on Faster Bay Area District and the proposed 1-cent sales tax increase?
Well, yes, the 1 cent sales tax is actually going to have conditions on it for the indigent, for the people with low income, that they'll receive a credit on their taxes as a way to make it less regressive on the impact that's going to fit or affect people. I'm absolutely in support of it. This is the enabling legislation, is SB 278. It's going through the Senate Transportation Committee on Tuesday. I'm a co-author of it. The challenge that we have is 30%, 35% of the congestion occurs in Alameda County. Now, we can fight with North County and the 580, 680 corridor, but what's important for us at the state level is to make sure that we get something comparable to the impact of the congestion that's occurring around the Bay Area. You know, Marin, Sonoma, San Francisco, San Mateo, all the counties are going to be fighting for their list of projects that they have, and we'll have specific projects and then categories that is going to go in, and it's a give and take. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of people have criticized R3 that the Alameda County did not do as well. So that's the fight ahead of us. And we want to get a package together so that the people of Alameda County and Livermore and Dublin and Fremont feel this is a good thing for them.
Mr. Bacon?
Thank you. in general, the sales tax does tend to be regressive, and even though there are some things built into it, sales taxes in general are regressive. I think this solution is basically, throwing a lot of money. We're talking about $100 billion at the problem. Now, I have to admit, I'm an engineer. I love these big projects. However, you really have to question, what we get the bang for the buck. I mean, if we're talking about something like another BART tube or another Bay Bridge, this is something that's going to have an enormous price tag. And also, it's not going to be done for at least 10 or 15 years. That's how long these projects take. Again, I would go back to what I said before. We really need to look at, better solutions as far as where we are locating our jobs and where we are locating housing. It's a far cheaper thing. And again, I know I used to do travel demand forecasting. I know that's what it's all about, is where are the jobs and where are the housing. And when we continue to allow more and more commercial development on the peninsula and have more and more housing development here, you're only going to make the problem worse. If you're not addressing that, you're not addressing the problem. So again, I would look at something like a much smaller, what would it take, like $100 million to do something, to do an economic job center, out here in the Tri-Valley. I mean, that is something that would truly help solve traffic. But, spending billions and billions, up to $100 billion, I'm not against those major projects, but with those you seriously have to look at what are they getting as far as you're paying for your buck for something of that size. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez.
I do believe that the Faster Bay area, the 1% sales tax is needed. And it's needed because a lot of these projects can be accomplished. With obviously Valley Link would be one of those projects that are needed, definitely. But also working with making sure that working with different companies as well and getting their input on the 1% sales tax. But also working with the 9 counties is really important. And in order for us to be able to accomplish these, there is going to have to be a sales tax in it.
Mr. Halbert.
The jury is still out for me on Faster Bay Area. It is promises a lot, and it can be one of the greatest generational proposals of our time. $100 billion to massively transform our transportation in the Bay Area. It sounds really, really good, and I want to get there. However, looking at the past performance of measures who promise, and Sacramento politics and state taxes that promise things that they then don't deliver, I'm very wary of. The same has been said by many local regional agencies and councils who still want to see more assurances that, for example, Valley Link will be fully funded. We want to see that in writing, and when that passes, that would be big and important for me. I'm not willing to just roll over. I'm going to fight hard to make sure that we get our fair share of that funding. But I absolutely agree that more transportation funding is needed. And I also want to say I absolutely agree we have a jobs, housing imbalance, and I fought hard to push into legislation that we would have a jobs, housing balance mechanism to incentivize jobs to move to the Tri-Valley and to penalize cities that only add more jobs but no housing. Needs to change.
Question 3 will be asked by Mayor Lily May.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to give some background. Certain state law, including Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act of 2008, SB50 strongly discourage interregional commuting in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, many state, regional, and local policy decisions oriented towards economic development and housing affordability directly or indirectly encourage interregional commuting. Some believe we should be building housing in the job-rich areas and/or jobs should be located near the workers, for example, in District 1 and Central Valley, as opposed to encouraging urban sprawl, which negatively impacts the environment. So the question, and I'll begin with Mr. Bacon, what are the top 3 things you will do to encourage more of the best job opportunities are within District 1, thereby helping to reduce interregional commuting?
Well, as I said before, I think we really need to incentivize employers to come here. The other thing, I think I'll go back to the central premise of me and my campaign. I don't take money from developers. I don't, and what we've seen is developers come in and want to do more residential. That's what gets them the biggest bang for their buck. We've seen city councils that have come and said, okay, we'll change our general plan so that you can have more housing. And I've seen it in Fremont over and over, these projects, and I'm kind of like, why are they approving more and more housing when we don't have enough jobs? The other thing is, in Fremont, in our general plan, there's quote-unquote mixed-use areas. However, developers will come in and their developments literally will have like 96% of the square footage will be residential with a little bit of retail on the bottom. We really need to look at those areas, especially the areas near transit, and especially the ones in Fremont, I'm very concerned about, that we're getting more denser housing and jobs at that site. Like for example, our Warm Springs BART station, I was rather disappointed that we ended up with upwards of 4,000 homes there. I really think we need to do more to encourage that kind of development, and not just encourage it, but insist that we have development that is more, satisfies the jobs housing imbalance that we've talked about.
Ms. Hernandez?
So the Board of Supervisors, it's actually the individual that sits in that seat. I really truly feel that Scott Haggerty did a great job on trying to get some of the local businesses here in Livermore and in Fremont. Gillig was one of the examples that I'm talking about. It's the person that can make sure that they use their seat to make those relationships and bring in top jobs like that into Livermore, Tesla into Fremont, and also working with the council, the council members and the council, the city managers as well. But to provide top jobs as the Alameda County Supervisor, the Board of Supervisor can make sure that they sit as the chief person to make sure there's economic development in those cities by being a partnership with the cities as well.
As the mayor, I have always encouraged businesses to move to the city of Dublin. We've been very successful in doing that. TriNet is a perfect example of a $7 billion company. The CEO moved his company from Palo Alto to Dublin because he recognized that people live in the Tri-Valley area, and he decided that he would commute and let his people not have to commute as much. I've also preserved many of the parcels of land that are located in our city that are designated for commercial development. When the developers come and say they want to convert that to residential, I have said no time and time again because it allows us in the future to bring more jobs where the people live. I will always support that. I oppose all measures to take away local control, and you have to look deeply into Sacramento politics, and SB50 is a project, a law that would take away local control and not allow us to preserve commercial space, but rather force cities to put it over to residential development. And I absolutely oppose any attack on local control. As county supervisor, I will fight hard to preserve local control and to make sure that we are able to move jobs closer to where people live. The Tri-Valley and the Fremont Central area have a bright future, but only if we fight hard to preserve our local control. Thank you.
Mr. Wachowski?
The top three things I would do is, one, increase the funding for transportation beyond Faster Bay area, provide some flexibility in the housing money that we do provide, the programs that the state has, that people try to clobber together housing projects, and come up with new incentives to make business deals to allow private industry to say, yes, we're going to move into the Dublin area or Livermore. One of the things that we can do on the transportation is to increase the floor level on the cap and trade. Currently, right now, we get 20% of the funds that are in the cap and trade comes for affordable housing. Some money, 10% goes to transit, 5% goes to rail links. We got the high-speed rail. If we increase that floor from $16, which is shamefully low, that will double the money that comes to local governments, whether it's Fremont or Dublin. The flexibility on the housing, what we find out is that we've got so much paperwork that our nonprofits have to do or our developers have to do to try to get something built. It's like a ping pong between the city's planning department and zoning and back and forth and back and forth. And those local ordinances really make it prohibitive or make the price of doing business shoot up. So those are the three things. And on the business side, we'll talk about that later.
Candidates. Question number 5 will be presented by Benny Lee.
Mr. Halbert, we will start off with you on question number 5. Here's the background. According to recent statistics from the federal government, homelessness in the United States, excluding California, has fallen nationally. Yet, over the past 5 years, it's skyrocketed over 100% in Alameda County during the same period. What do you believe are the causes skyrocketing homelessness in Alameda County? And if elected, what would you do to address the worsening situation?
Well, indeed, nobody can deny California is in an epidemic crisis when it comes to homelessness. And polling shows that everybody is concerned about this from the state on down. Major cities have been drastically impacted. And yet, as you mentioned, across the country, there have been other examples of cities that have not been impacted. One of the root causes is going to be unaffordability of places to afford to rent or buy. Other causes have been the fact that jobs at those levels aren't available to people. Other root causes are mental health and addiction, which grasps the people. And I tell you, the people I talk to that are experts in the homelessness will tell you that a catastrophic, life-changing event is often the root cause of an individual slipping into homelessness. And once they get there, it's very hard to get out. Just yesterday, I was with a council member from Livermore and another person that's a volunteer in the community down at the Arroyo in Livermore, talking with homeless people. They need a place to live, a job to sustain them, and services for mental health and addiction. I will fight hard to make that happen. We have good people already trying to do that. We have to do better. It's unconscionable that we have so many people homeless on the streets. We need a moral imperative to fix this, and I will work hard to solve that. Thank you.
Mr. Wojtkowski.
I think that the facts going on now is that 50% of the people are $400 away from missing paying their bills. We have so much of the middle of our population is on this teetering on whether they're going to be able to pay their bills. I think probably all the information that we read on homelessness is affordability, is that there's a mental health component to that, where people just choose to be homeless or without housing. I think the action that we need to take, and the state is doing it, and as much as everybody doesn't like the state's putting some real money into rapid rehousing. The statistics say that if you rapidly rehouse people and get them in a spot, then you don't have to worry about the services. You want to do the services then, but they need the housing. We've made some mistakes in the past. I think you can look at other jurisdictions that have done a good job. Marin has done a fantastic job about buying houses. They just buy a house and they convert the living room into another bedroom, and they have 4 or 5 people living there. We've got hotels that are available that should have been bought or could be bought by the county in order to provide that housing that folks need.
Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. Well, I'm very proud that very recently in Fremont, our council voted unanimously to approve a homeless navigation center right in our downtown. We faced enormous opposition. We had literally 1,000 people at one of our council meetings, many of whom were opposed and spoke very harshly against any kind of a homeless navigation center. But I do feel it is a moral imperative that we have to provide help, because clearly what's going on at the national level is you have rising income inequality, and there are many people who are now down at the bottom. And also, I would say, as far as with the supervisor's role, I'm very proud of the programs that Alameda County provides, because we definitely, need to provide those kind of programs. The bottom line here is it's an issue of affordable housing. Clearly, these people cannot afford to live in a house. And when we have, developments that come before our council and they say, oh, we want to put in 100 units, they're going to be all townhomes with $1.2 million, $1.2 million each. And maybe you have 15%, affordable, which is not really, affordable for someone. When we continue that pattern of development, which I've seen, not just in Fremont, but many other cities, it's just not going to solve the problem. But I do think there is a moral imperative to help people who are less fortunate than us. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez.
So some of the causes, I do believe, are affordable housing, mental illness, and also drug addiction. So making sure that we look at this not only at a county level, but also to the state level. If you are aware that Governor Newsom just decided a couple days ago to be able to concentrate on the homelessness in the state of California. So it is definitely a crisis, but making sure that we address this in a multi-pronged approach. It's not just one shoe fits all. It's making sure that we go in there and we assess the homelessness. In Mariposa County, they're doing this right now as we speak, and they've created a plan. Is they go in there and they look at the homeless and they evaluate them. Do they need drug addiction help? Do they need just a little bit more extra money to be able to pay their rent for the next month's rent? Do they need some mental awareness, by care providers to make sure that it's being given to them? So it's not just a one-size-fits-all type of problem. It's making sure that all of those areas are being looked at.
Thank you.
There is a broad focus and discussion on increasing our use of renewable forms of energy to address climate change. One source of renewable power is solar photovoltaic panels, which can be mounted on residences, on top of commercial and institutional buildings, and over parking lots in developed districts where the power is consumed, so-called distributed generation. They can also be sited as large arrays on grazing and other open space lands, so-called utility-scale solar energy facilities, which would displace agriculture and reduce wildlife natural habitat. The Board of Supervisors, not the California Energy Commission, has authority to approve conditional use permits for solar energy facilities because they are not considered thermal power plants, which are regulated by the state. So the question is, do you favor distributed generation because it has fewer environmental impacts? Or do you believe in all of the above approach, including utility scale, is necessary because of the cuteness of the climate problem? And we'll begin with Mr. Wachowski. Thank you.
I absolutely believe in all of the above. The Legislative Analyst's Office just came out with a report about our meeting our climate change. And the problem with distributed energy, while everybody likes rooftop, it sounds familiar with folks, it's about 4 to 5 times more expensive than utility scale. Not every utility scale development goes on productive farmland, because there's very productive farmland, and then just a lot of wasteland. So we have probably 300 Superfund sites in California that nothing can be done with that. So there is an environmental impact, but cleverly we can do that. We have to do all of the above. I mean, we're not making our climate our goals. We luckily, because of the IOUs, this is PG&E and Southern Edison, they made all those investments in renewable resources. That's why we made our 2020 goals. On the course that we are right now, without some aggressive action at the county level, at the state level, we're just not going to make it. And all the children in our community are going to be adversely affected. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually, as I mentioned, I got involved in politics as a Sierra Club member, so of course I'm very understanding of the need for renewable energy. Myself, I have solar panels, I have an electric car. As far as the distributed energy, I mean, PG&E would like it, that we don't do that we don't have, and by the way, I do not take any funds from PG&E, which is actually lobbied almost every single member of our state Senate and Assembly. I do, and also the problem with this non-distributed energy is it's what's leading to the fires, is we have huge, power lines that are carrying enormous amounts of power. And I look around Fremont or even Dublin or everywhere, in this climate, solar works very well. And you can definitely have more of a, distributed grid where it's first of all more flexible, and you wouldn't be having the problems we have with PG&E with all the wildfires. So definitely we should go down the route of PG&E. And I am proud to say that this month, I was actually just looking up the numbers, and the solar panels on my house have completely provided the energy I use for my electric car. And that's the kind of thing that I think we should be doing much more of, providing incentives for that. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez?
I do believe that distributed generation energy has fewer impacts on the environment. But I also feel that Alameda County is doing a great job right now as we speak, and we have all of the cities under East Bay Community Energy, and we're constantly striving to produce more solar for our residents. We are trying to give the best rate that we possibly can get for all of our residents that are in Alameda County. So I do believe that Alameda County is doing their job. We have one of the biggest solar systems on Santa Rita Gel, and all of our buildings are becoming more and more green. They also have projects in the future that want to be completed by Alameda County and also East Bay Community Energy as well.
Mr. Halbert?
I absolutely agree that we need to convert to green energy. In the city of Dublin, we've made the decision to sign on with the East Bay Community Energy. And here again, I don't know, maybe for the 5th time today, we're going to thank Supervisor Haggerty for his leadership at East Bay Community Energy, also for his leadership in the solar panels atop Santa Rita Jail and many other projects. He's done a great job. We're going to follow that lead and keep pushing for green energy and also cost-effective energy. And competition is good, and I'm proud that the city of Dublin has signed on that all of our energy will be sourced from green areas. In the city of Dublin, we also recycle 90% of our municipal water usage, which is great. I would look for programs like that to take place within the county. I don't have an electric car, Vinny, but I've got solar panels on my house as well, so congratulations. I'm worried about what happens if the the power goes out. We should be able to have that solar be able to power our houses when PG&E doesn't provide us with housing. When they do the rolling blackouts that they've had, they shut our power off. It happened in the city of Dublin twice. We have to find a better way to resolve that.
Provided by our questioning committee. The background. Alameda County approved Measure D in 2000, which amended the general plan to accomplish the purpose of the measure. Its purpose was to protect 250,000 acres of unincorporated rural land from excessive, badly located, and harmful development. 95% of this land is located in District 1. For the past 2 years, a group of stakeholders, selected by the Board of Supervisors and facilitated by county staff, met to see if consensus could be reached on amending Measure D. The question: please describe your understanding of the outcome of these stakeholder meetings. There will be 2 follow-up questions. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. I am actually against any amendments to Measure D unless they're actually restricting more and more property from development. Definitely what we're seeing in the Bay Area is sprawl. If you look at the development out in Tracy or Modesto, it's definite sprawl. If we're going to accommodate growth, it has to be infill growth within the existing urban boundaries. And it has to be dense development near transit. The idea of saying we're going to take unincorporated lands and, especially the ones in eastern Alameda County, I mean, we already have enough of a traffic problem. If you try to develop some of those lands, it's just going to make things absolutely worse. So I don't think I need my 90 seconds to say no. We need to develop near transit. We need denser housing near transit if we're going to grow. We cannot just simply expand into unincorporated, undeveloped areas. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez.
So when Measure D was created about 20 years ago, it had so many good attributes to it. But now when you do see that the majority of the unincorporated area is in Measure D, where the wine growers and the agricultural farms are at and land, you really need to go back and utilize and see what's going on here. So many cities go back to their general plan and see if they can have changes to it or they can amend it. With Measure D, it's not about building housing. It's not. When the Board of Supervisors came together about a few weeks ago, they came together to look back at Measure D. I was there at that meeting, and the discussion was to look at see how the wine growers can flourish, how the ag can flourish in those areas. Again, it's not about developing housing in the unincorporated area. It's about how we can sustain these different wine growing and ag. How can we keep TopCon that is now going to be moving out of Livermore as an economic development? It's more about how can we change the floor area ratio to be able to accommodate the wine growers and the agricultural. Again, it's not about saying, hey, we're going to develop all this housing on Measure D unincorporated land.
Mr. Halbert.
Measure D indeed was passed 20 years ago, and what we've seen, I believe, are some unintended consequences of the wording in Measure D, some of which may face legal challenges and some of which is going through a discussion of how do you exactly interpret Measure D. I agree that Measure D should not be about or changed to be about adding tons of more housing in the areas that we want to preserve as open space. Measure D, however, needs to allow the owner of a barn to extend that barn if that's what he needs to do to keep his business afloat. The Livermore Valley winery people that I talk to are struggling and teetering on the edge of being able to make things work because of some of the restrictions of Measure D, which I think we can have met with a fair compromise. Indeed, this will be something that the county supervisors will be wrestling with for quite some time, or at least in the next year or two. We have to find a compromise, have to find a solution that doesn't bring a ton of more unintended consequences or unintended housing, but allows our businesses to flourish, especially the ag businesses, and not just the wine growers, but the ranchers in the area and people that own land in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wojtkowski.
My understanding of the outcome was that all the non-developers, the developers, the wine growers, the Sierra Club, the open space, the technical purists on Measure D could not reach a consensus. So what the outcome has been is that the Board of Supervisors has said that they raised the question of whether they can make technical changes and variances, because part of the challenge of any initiative or a statewide initiative is that you can't make any changes in it. The people have voted, and often you just have one group that comes up and writes the legislation, and those unintended consequences, whatever they may be, you're unable to make those changes. So I think the outcome is that the Board of Supervisors is going to take the political heat, say we will figure out what those variances and those technical changes are, so we can embrace the spirit of Measure D that the people have. That's my understanding.
Thank you. Yes or no? Second part of the question, if you support amending Measure D, which specific provision of Measure D should be changed and how should they be changed? Why?
So again, I definitely think that Measure D does need to be looked at. Just like I said earlier, any general plan in any city usually needs to go and be looked at and reassessed again. The question is, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The second part of the question is, if you support amending Measure D, which specific provision of Measure D should be changed, and how should they be changed, and why?
So definitely to look at the floor area ratio. I think it's really important to make sure that our wine growers and ag and ranchers are being treated fairly. It's actually now hurting them. And to go back and make sure that this, unincorporated area of Livermore flourishes, it's really important to District 1.
Thank you. Mr. Halbert.
I believe in the power of the people, and if it's a ballot initiative that's required, I would look at possibly supporting that. I would want to know the complexities and the cost involved with that. I think that a good compromise could be allowing the supervisors to make the technical changes that might be necessary and let it rest with them. The voters approve the supervisors, and we are elected of the people, by the people, and to serve for the people. So I think that would be another good compromise. The floor area ratio has to be reviewed, and indeed, open space has to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wojtkowski.
I would support bringing Measure back for a refresh with the public. I think if it's narrowly tailored and embraces the spirit of the open space, I think we've had conversations of some of this land is really unproductive. It's an unincorporated Alameda County, but it wasn't the pristine mountains and the watersheds and the things and the agricultural land that people were expecting. One of the elements was that we were hoping to spur the vineyard development, and as I understand it, the goal was to get to 5,000 acres of planted vineyards. We're at 28, so less than 3,000. So that dream has not been realized. If it means putting in a water pipe so that the people can get off the septic and they can get on the sewer system, those things are up to the Board of Supervisors to narrowly tailor.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. This is a different question than the previous one, because this one is talking about not the Board of Supervisors taking action, but a ballot measure. And again, I think without knowing what are the specifics of the ballot measure, it's hard to say whether it support it or not. But again, I go back to my previous answer. The intent of Measure D was to preserve open space. And I know in Fremont we had it, there was an issue, actually right outside of Fremont, there was an issue where a new barn was constructed, and there was great concern that this would actually be turned into a brewery, which actually would then bring a lot more people there. So it's not just a question of, oh, I need to improve my winery operations. I mean, are we talking about bringing in, so they can have larger events so that they can bring more traffic? I mean, I really think we need to look at, again, what are the specifics of that. But I look at Measure D as something rather sacred, that it was intended to preserve that open space, and that if there are going to be any changes to that, that key idea of preserving open space has to be central to any changes that we make. Thank you.
Hey, I think it's a great question. I want to thank the supervisor for asking it, and I want to go back. I don't go back 24 years in Alameda County. Moved here 20 years ago, but I got to meet Supervisor Haggerty way back when Alameda County was wanting to build the super jail or the juvenile hall in Dublin, and we pushed back on that. And I've gotten to know him quite well over that long time. And I sit next to him on the Alameda County Transportation Commission, and on LAFCO Commission, and on LAVDA Commission. So I know a lot about what county supervisors do, and it's doing things like social services and the budget that comes down from the state of California. They're the middleman to the local communities. They have a lot of influence over regional transportation projects. They have the keys to solving homelessness and chronic people that don't have enough to eat. They also have juvenile hall, the sheriff's budget, the DA's office budget, just so many projects that I can't wait to look forward to help serve and make better for our county. And I will work hard and fight hard to make the quality of life in Alameda County
Thank you.
the best it can be.
Thank you. Mr. Wojtkowski.
So the county has about 10,000 employees. They have a $3.5 billion budget, and there's 4 general areas that it's divided into. You have healthcare that's provided to the residents. There's public assistance, SNAP, the different programs that they get a portion of their money from the federal government and state, up 55%, and they administer that. Public protection, we have the sheriff's office, we have the county jail, and then just general government programs. We got the, Dublin has a county library, Fremont has a county library, so they provide those services. They also serve on a variety of regional boards that they participate in, whether it's the Air Quality Board and MTC or ABAG or the Alameda County Transportation Commission, that the county supervisors participate in those regional boards.
Thank you. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. Yes, the biggest thing is, of course, administering a $3.5 billion budget. I have looked through the budget, and I have to admit, I mean, most of the items, you know, it's not like if I were elected, I would get on the board of supervisors and say, let's hack this and hack that. I think the budget overall is very good. Again, I'm quite proud of the programs that are that the county administers. Also, they act as the city council of the unincorporated areas, which do not have a city council. So again, they serve a very important role there. And as Senator Wajkowski indicated, they serve on a lot of regional planning issues. And that's where I think I would argue that we've seen the biggest failure, because we really need to do a better job of regional planning in the Bay Area. I mean, how in the world did we get to this place where traffic is just horrendous for most of the people? And I think that's the one thing that we really need to work with the other counties, and we need to do a much better job on a regional level. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez.
So the job of a Board of Supervisor, yes, you've heard from every single one of the candidates up here and how we have a $3.5 billion budget. We have 9,000 employees. We deal with contracts. They also have unions that they have to work with as well too. They provide services. The Board of Supervisors sit on a lot of committees, and they also make sure that they keep a balanced budget. They try to make sure that they have a balanced budget every year. But the one thing that every single one of these candidates has forgotten, the job of an Alameda County Supervisor is to make the residents' lives a little bit better. The neediest people that live in Alameda County, to make their every single day a little bit better, and making sure that those social programs are utilized correctly.
Thank you. And Supervisor Haggerty, thank you for that. You have a minute and a half, starting off with Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. First of all, I'll be happy to sit around and answer any questions that people have. We all know that traffic in these parts is horrible. Why? Because we have a massive jobs housing imbalance, with most of the jobs in Silicon Valley or the peninsula, and many of the homes over here. How did our regional planners at MTC let the problem get this bad? Anyone with a basic understanding of travel demand forecasting should have seen this coming. Again, I believe that at the local and regional level, moneyed interests representing developers, such as the California Real Estate PAC, which has a lot of interest in this election, have bought influence in our political system. I've seen it in Fremont. We had a council full of candidates who took money from developers. We even had a few developers serve on the council themselves. So it's not surprising that our council acted as a rubber stamp for developers, approving projects that make developers the most profit as opposed to what is best for a well-planned city. The net result has been horrible traffic, overcrowded schools, and an affordable housing crisis. I'm proud to have started the trend of saying I won't take money from developers, and I will only approve changes to our general plan that make sense. After being elected, I've supported other candidates, and now, as of the 2018 election, we have a majority of city council members that do not take developer money and never have. It can be done. We can change our political system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wajkowski.
Arun, Benny, and Lily, thank you for being the moderators. A20, Dublin Chamber, APAPA, and Sierra Club, thank you for sponsoring. Scott Haggerty, thank you for your service to the county. You know, you've created an atmosphere of trust. People in this room and people throughout the county, when I've been walking precincts and talking to folks, they trust Scott Haggerty. And I hope to step into those shoes and earn that trust from the people. I have some trust in the people, that the million people I represent in the state legislature. And it does that over a series of years where you take on tough issues, whether it's bank levies or wage garnishments or climate change. You're outspoken on tough issues. And as one of the questioners asked, where's your passion? What's the passion that you have? I'm not a rich guy. I'm a bankruptcy attorney. I got in representing poor people. That's who this county represents. The county represents some people that aren't able to meet their monthly nut on the housing or their health care services or their food stamps, and they need some assistance. And how do you cleverly and passionately provide the funding with the limited funds that the county was had? I would be honored to represent people at the 1st Supervisorial District next year in Alameda County.
Thank you. Mr. Halbert.
I echo the thanks to everybody that organized and moderated and sponsored this event. I also want to thank each and every one of you, the residents of Alameda County, for coming and spending your time with us here today to understand what the candidates have to say. And I'm going to tell you, I had a prepared 1.5 minute, exactly on the dot, statement to read to you. I'm just going to come from the heart and say that I have served my community for the last 18 years because that's what I am built to serve. I enjoy being elected of the people, by the people, for the people. My wife and I have always done that. Michelle, thank you for being here. She's served in the schools and on Dublin Partisan Education. We are here to serve the community. We work hard to do that. And Alameda County Supervisor is the very next logical progression of that. I look forward to digging in with an independent mind, not tied to any special interest or any political party, just one of you, of the people, by the people, for the people, and getting things done. A mayor gets things done. And the mayors of the Tri-Valley have all endorsed me, and I look forward to taking the lead of jumping right in, following in the footsteps of my good friend Alameda County Supervisor Scott Haggerty, and continuing to lead the charge on behalf of the people. Thank you for being here today. Please vote David Albert for Alameda County Supervisor, March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Please no clapping. Please no clapping. Thank you. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you. And I do want to thank all the residents that are out in the audience this afternoon, as well as all the moderators and the individuals that put this together. So I truly feel that I am the best candidate for District 1 Supervisor because I am the most diverse candidate. I want to be a leader in homelessness, traffic, affordable housing, public safety, and our social net programs that Alameda County Board Supervisors look at and go through with the fine cone. But the simple answer is to some of the questions that I'm asked when I go walking in District 1 and ask our residents for their vote is, what separates you from all the other candidates that are running? There's a couple things here that actually separates me as a candidate. One, I am a Latina woman that have been there, done that, and needed to use some of these social programs as I was growing up. I have a great amount of support. The support from Alameda County Fire, the support from all public safety in District 1, also public safety outside of District 1. I have the support from Supervisor Wilma Chan. I have the support from Supervisor Valle, and I just got the support from Supervisor Scott Haggerty. I have 3 Board of Supervisors, and I'm the only candidate that has that supporting me for District 1.
Thank you.
And I want, so I'm just going to say one last thing. I want to be the person that carries on the mission that Supervisor Scott Haggerty has stood for 24 years. And I look forward to your vote and your support.